All right, guys, we're back for the August 24th episode of 7th Gear Show. I'm the host, Kevin Krause, as you know. Thanks so much for all of the support we've had from the viewers here over the last few weeks. We had a great show 2 weeks ago with Ted Warner from the Miles Ahead School. Tonight, we are out back here at the Wake Robin Inn, just a stone's throw away from the historic Lime Rock Park. I'm here all week, as it were, with some very good friends of mine, some motorsports professionals that have graciously agreed to come join me tonight for tonight's show. These are guys that I've come to know and become great friends with, privileged enough to call them not only friends but family as well. And we are in for a fantastic show. We may have some people kind of coming in and out of the show tonight offering their perspectives, but tonight's topic is going to be a fairly provocative one, I would say. It's a question that we as racers often ask ourselves, and at some point during our lives we probably have had family members ask us the very same question. So before we get into tonight's show, I just want to introduce our starting guest, as it were, and we'll see who else is able to join us tonight. But as I turn this around, because we're working through some technical issues here, I'd like to introduce my good friends, Mr. Don Kutchel and Mr. Ernie Becker.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hey, boys. As well as Mr. Nipper Alsip, who you may remember from the Indy 500 preview show, along with his brother AJ from Road Atlanta, as well as our good friend Mr. Neil Sapp. So, gentlemen, all right, so here's the question, and I purposely left this kind of vague for you guys because I didn't want you to have to overthink this one. Nipper, you awake?
I'm ready.
All
I was
right.
overthinking.
I was gonna
Come
say.
on, really.
I was going to say, we better get this show in the can here, otherwise I think we're going to lose some people. All right, so tonight's question, I mean, and let me just preface this, 7th Gear viewers, by saying all of these guys, including myself, have been there, done that. We've competed at professional level racing, everything from sports cars to open wheel cars, NASCAR. There's many wins, championships, you name it, sitting around this table. And we've come from, the ground up, doing it the hard way, working on our own stuff, owning our own stuff, to teaching and staying involved in the industry. So these guys are as good as they're going to come in terms of perspective on tonight's topic. And it's a simple question. Simple yet difficult. So the question for tonight's show, gang, 7th Gear viewers, you ready? The question is, why? Why do we as racers do this? Why do we continue to chase the drive, the ride, this motorsports thing? Why do we continue to risk our time and our money and our relationships? Because, as we all know, the lows are far more greater than the elation that we get from the little success that we get. So, that's the question. Why do we continue to do what we do?
Wow. Yes, we do get that very often.
Right? When are you going to get a real job? Have you got that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'm glad you're doing something that pleases you.
Right.
Boom. Right off
Yeah.
the bat.
But it's as you know, for me, I've always been enamored of high performance motion, just things in motion, myself in motion, and I started in karts. Boy, if I give it a year, it's going to be, in 1959, my first trophies in karts. And so, karting, when I first hopped in a go-kart, I was utterly taken by. And that started my road. Fortunately, I had a mentor who helped me out, but, I was going to do this. It just had to happen. It was a very low budget, but I wanted to try to control high-performance motion. It's always somewhat of an illusion, the sense of
Control the uncontrollable.
Control the uncontrollable, but that's why you chase it. One of the things that draws me to it most is the utter focus on this one thing at the moment to the exclusion of all else. Yeah. That if you're anywhere else other than where you are, you're not there for long. Yeah.
That's pretty deep, Don.
Spoken like the man himself.
I just got past and turned 3.
Yeah, we just got past and turned 3 already. Don's already found the 6th
Sorry.
gear, and I'm not.
Sorry,
I'm just gonna let the clutch
No,
out
this
here.
is good stuff.
For me, was never forced into it. I grew up around the beach. I mean, literally a quarter mile away from the ocean. Probably the only kid that grew up at the beach that hated surfing. Just never was into it, but my parents met at a sports car race or a drag race or something like that. and my dad had a little sports car, and I was in it all the time, and I got too big, and they had to get rid of it. My dad used to mope around, and my first mini bike race was 5, and I just enjoyed every minute of it, and I just progressed from there. And it's one of those things, you just do it because you love it. You know what I mean? I made a choice at a young age. I wanted to be involved in motorsports, as a racer, as an engineer, as a coach, anything. I just enjoyed being around the sport, and I've been very fortunate to make a living what I'm doing right now. I enjoy the people. I've got to meet some extraordinary people, some of my heroes in my life. From become very good friends with Derek Hill, and his father obviously is Phil Hill, the 1961 world champion, and being involved with a company in which I'm still involved with called Metalor, which does a lot of the high-end driveline components. So I got to meet and become really good friends with a designer named John Barnard. His accomplishments in Formula One is just phenomenal, from inventing and bringing in the carbon fiber tub to some other, driveline, bringing certain driveline components. Probably the most popular is the semi-automatic gearbox. He's kind of shaped how Formula One cars are. Just talking to people like that, hearing the stories about Senna and Prost and Schumacher. But for me, I just love being around it. It's just simple as that. Not as deep as Don's. It's just I like being around it. I love racing. I love pushing myself. I'm like, you kind of make a mistake, you go, ooh, how can I make that better? Or if you do something right, you go, boom, right off the get-go. How can we make it better?
All right. So let's get some other perspective here. Neil, what about you, buddy?
Wow, for me, I guess, I remember as a kid, I was probably 5 or 6. My dad would let me get on his lap and steer the car, and he'd come home every day at 5 o'clock. We had like an alleyway, and I would wait every day at 5 o'clock for him to get home, so I could jump on his lap and drive it up the alley and steer it park it into the driveway, waving at all the other kids. Definitely got hooked then, and kind of like Don, I just liked the feel of the G-forces and just pushing the car to its limits and just extracting everything that it has, and that feeling of the G-forces and finding that perfect apex and that perfect line, and just the whole mix for me. I'm just a gearhead from a little kid. I just like cars in general, and then all the driving in there and the racing and just the thrill of victory, and it's hard to explain unless you've done it. All of us here at this table have done it, but racing wheel to wheel for me is just, I've started from the bottom up, from autocross, which I still love today, don't get me wrong, it's great. There's guys there, it's top-notch competition. For me, I love the wheel-to-wheel competition in road racing, so good stuff. It's just chasing that perfect apex, that perfect lap, and you just keep going for it, so.
Constantly chasing that's the competition. For other people in competitive sports, whether it's football, baseball, whatever, it's that one-on-one competition to beat the other guy, right? Well, it's beat the other guy, but it's in most other sports you're dependent on a number of other teammates, and in racing you've got your crew and everything else. But once you're on the racetrack, it's just you, right? And for me anyway, growing up, I liked football and sports and all that other stuff, but I was never quite big enough to make it in football. I was never quite fast enough to make it in other sports. So, like a lot of us, you're kind of either too big, too small, kind of tweeners, that sort of thing. But it's just, it's one of those where I find it to be kind of very cerebral for one, and it's a way to really, put it on you as that person to get it done. I don't have to worry about if the center made the right snap, or if the quarterback threw the ball the right way, or if I dropped it or whatever. But
Kevin, you're absolutely right. In the end, this is a mental game, as are all sports or activities at their highest level. It's all about you and your focus in your head and how you can extract the most at that moment. But it is in your head after all.
Absolutely right, and at the speeds that we go, whether you're at karting speed or IndyCar speed or whatever, you're having to think at hyper speed. It's like that supercomputer at however many hundreds of miles an hour, or tens of hundreds of miles an hour, whatever it is. But all right, so Nipper, you've been awfully quiet over there. We haven't heard you yet. Did you get your nap in?
Yeah, that's it. I'm rested up and ready to go.
All right. What's your take?
Well, obviously, all of us that are sitting at this table are the real thing, are hardcore about it. So, I think that we all touched on the various parts of it that bring us back to it, right? The time continuum piece that Don talks about. It's amazing how you're in the car for hours, and it feels like minutes, just like that because of the focus, and like Ernie was saying, I think the camaraderie piece of this whole business is really a big deal. It was for my dad. I know, the friends and the relationships and stuff, and me too. I mean, if you really do it your whole life, you have this whole band of friends around the country and world that you see from time to time, and you pick right back up where you left, and there isn't this awkward catching up or anything, how a few sentences, and then you get talking about racing again, which is right, which is what you, and then I think what Neil talked about. There's got to be, because I think over the years we've seen guys that have had all the ingredients to be racers, whether they're, dad owned a team or something or whatever it may be. They've had certain or a lot of talent or just. But you have to really enjoy turning the wheel and pushing the pedals. Mm-hmm. So I think that all of us at some point had, whether it was a go-kart as a kid or your first entry-level racer where you just, you weren't really changing anything. You were just on the car or working on setup. You were just going out and driving it just for the joy of driving the thing. Yeah, and that felt a little better that time. And so, yeah, I think it's obviously a huge part of our lives and what we do, and I can't even imagine sort of the same everyday pick a formal trade profession where you're working your 50 weeks a year, going to the same office every day. That's way scarier than any kind of race car crash to me, I'll tell you. So,
right.
Yeah.
One more lap, I can go a little bit quicker. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
All right, so, and I think any racer or anybody that's close to racers or has been around it for a while, like we have, probably understands what we're talking about. But, as I kind of alluded to when I asked the question to open the show, I know, without even asking the question of you guys, that this sport has taken a toll in certain ways, right? I'd be willing to bet that it's either compromised or cost us various relationships, right? Whether it be with a significant other or family member, not being able to be there on a family birthday, or I remember when I was working on my Formula Ford in the garage late at night, standing my girlfriend up because I would rather get the gearbox put back together so I could go to Blackhawk the next day than go out to dinner.
That never happened in my life.
But those things happen, right?
Yeah.
They've happened to you guys, haven't they?
Absolutely.
And then you get those questions. I mean,
My
how
prom money paid for a new clutch. I didn't go to the prom, but I went.
Right. So I mean,
Didn't tell my parents that.
so I guess the follow-up then is kind of a two-part question. Number one, how do you reconcile those losses to the value that you assign to those things, racing-wise, that made you decide to forego the other things or not put the attention into it? And I guess the second part of that then is, has your perspective on that changed from the beginning of your career, however many decades ago that was, to now that you've got the benefit of life experience and perspective and have achieved some things? I mean, so kind of a two-part follow-up there, guys. Go.
It's very addictive, obviously.
Well, for me, yeah, you sacrifice a lot. You sacrifice a lot of personal things out of your life to get where you want to be. I just looked at it as an opportunity. I looked at it. There's no difference for me trying to work myself up the corporate ladder. I just looked at it that way. If people didn't understand, I don't know if I wanted them in my life, to be frank. I mean, it's pretty selfish, but it's true. My family understood. I never had any issues with my family. My mom just used to always going through a phase, and she still says that to me now. But but she knows I'm completely happy. I mean, like I said, we're amongst friends. We're pushing the envelope in a lot of different aspects of it. For me, it was just my career path, if you want to call it that. I just enjoyed it. And my grandmother said to me, said something to me when I was really, really young. My grandmother helped raise me the majority of my life because my parents, for them to survive, they had to both work, and And my grandmother always said, "Enjoy what you do. If you enjoy what you do, it's not work, and you'll make money at it. You'll be completely happy. And it's not even about making money. It's about being happy in life." And I've kind of lived by that philosophy. And we're fortunate enough that we've been able to make a really good living at this, and some years better than others, but we're doing what we want to do. And I just look back to the personal aspect. If they didn't want to be, if they couldn't understand that, then I just.
Well, I can tell you, I know my mom got used to me never being home on her or Mother's Day or her birthday, because I was always in Indianapolis, because it was always a qualifying weekend, or I was at a racetrack or something, to get going from that.
I definitely sacrificed more when I was younger. I've kind of lifted a little bit more in my older years here.
Well, I think we all have.
Going to a race weekend, her first child, my wife's pregnant, and I was going to leave the next day, and that night she woke up and she was not feeling right. I'm like, I think I'm getting ready to have a baby. I'm like, it's a double race week. I'm like, I'm all packed, ready to go. I'm like, you're gonna be fine, honey. Trust me. It's not gonna. You're not due. She's not gonna come early. No. I bolt off, go racing. Sure enough, get a call. She's in labor. I got one race and it was a double, so I bolt to the hospital. I was in Poconos. Drove like 4 hours flat out. Came up 15 minutes short.
How did that go over?
Actually, not that bad. I was a pretty fortunate guy to have a pretty understanding wife when it came to the racing situation. So much better than others. So
I didn't have a lot of relationships.
She was a trooper, so in many ways.
That's a good story.
Who knew, right? Who knew?
Yeah. You certainly have to make choices in terms of your obligations to your family and friends. But then in the end, if you're not doing what you're passionate about, then you're false to yourself. And you can't be true to others if you're false to yourself. So I think the focus we've all had on this is something we, as a result of our passion for it.
And as you're saying that, Don, that actually kind of gives me a perspective that kind of goes to that. It's like, okay, we all got those questions from friends or family members. It's like, okay, why are you doing this? Why don't you go get a real job? Well, this is what makes us happy. If we had spent all that time going through school or climbing the corporate ladder or whatever and not being true to yourself, then what does that lead to down the line? A life full of regrets, somebody that, maybe falls into other things that maybe aren't the healthiest for you as a person. I know that, I got that question. It's like, okay, well, when are you going to get a real job?
Right.
Well, and for a while there, I was kind of juggling three things. I was putting myself through school because, I got the message from the family that that's the thing. You got to get a good job and, get a good salary and health care and, all that stuff. And so I was going to school for that. I was working full-time to support my racing habit, and then working on the race car when I could. And then, there were times where, either the schoolwork suffered or I couldn't do the racing stuff. It got to the point where I couldn't do all three things full time, so I had to alternate for a while. But eventually it got to the point where it's like, okay, this kind of found my way through the things that sort of made me happy. Still was able to have the education, and which has actually helped me out later. But it's like sometimes you gotta juggle a lot of things to make it work for you.
We've all got to do a lot of cool things at this table. So
Yeah.
I mean, if we all were just chasing the dollar, you would have stayed as you would have stayed at the
Professor.
college. Yeah, you would have stayed there. Exactly. But you weren't happy. This was your passion.
Yeah.
My brother, he's a car guy. He totally doesn't like. He makes good money. Totally doesn't like what he does. He's in the computers and stuff.
Yeah.
He envies me. I mean, he makes way more than I do, but he doesn't have no fun.
Right.
He's in traffic all day. He hates his job. But
That's
Well, we see that a lot in our job right now, where our
the
position.
students that come through always say, "Hey, you guys have the best job in the world."
Right. How do
Like,
I get your job?
Yeah.
Get your job. These guys are all millionaires.
Yeah, you got
and stuff.
the
They all
president-
make businesses. I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, I'll take your business,
And
and
that's
you can have this.
and that's the
position.
other funny part of it
You can
is
instruct
because
here.
we get to do what we love and we get to experience some pretty amazing things. But how many times in what we do have we heard that question? How do we get your job? You have the coolest job, and we often jokingly say, say it's a series of poor career choices, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But
No, we never
It
said
wasn't
that.
very hard.
but then at
Full
the same
evidence
time,
of a misspent youth, like
you know,
Don would say.
and I can tell you, Seventh Gear viewers, I mean, every one of these guys sitting at this table talking with us tonight, and pretty much everyone that we know in this industry are pretty smart, talented guys. And you know, the people that we work with when we're not actually racing competitively, you know, I mean, obviously they've made their livelihood. You know, they're owning companies, they're self-made men. You know, but yet they wish they had our jobs.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of times, you know, after a long 12-hour days in
Well,
the heat, you know, we go, we wish we had your job, because
Well,
then we
what's
could
cool with-
play. You know, so
what's
it's
cool with us and what we have is the talent we have is they can't buy it. They can't buy that. They can work at it, but they just can't go like a Ferrari. Oh, I'm just going to go buy it. I'll get one of those. That talent that we possess and they want, they just can't buy it. So they can work at it. So
And the combination of talent and experience, you know, of the experiences we've had to get us to where we are. Yeah, that's something you can't purchase, though we've spent a lot of money doing it.
But speaking of these guys that come through the school, which is really cool, and
Yeah.
like Paul Newman liked about racing was once you're at the race, everybody's into racing. Like we were working with big CEOs, you know, you guys know,
I
who
know,
we
for
had
sure,
some big people come through this program.
Yeah.
But once you're here, you're just on a level playing field, which is very cool when you're doing a motorsports weekend, whether it's a driving school like we do here, or you're doing a race weekend. Everybody's into that one thing, and it's
Yeah.
pretty neat.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, having a specialty. I mean, that is good stuff. And people can see that, you know, even when you just travel going through airports and stuff like that. I mean, it's obvious that we've been doing what we all do a long time with this racing or instructing stuff. And if you're, you know, as a young guy, was able to be around it a lot, and I just wanted to know everything about it. I just, you know, when it came to the cars and all of the stuff, and would watch guys work on stuff and make changes or whatever it was, and there was really like no other subject matter in my life where it's, I want to know why, and we'll kind of find out or ask, and it's always still, even after all these years, and even when, at times when I was away from car racing somewhat, doing other family stuff, and over the last 30 years, I always had sort of an eye towards it and looking for some of the amazing technologies that, you know, really have occurred in my lifetime too. I mean, from a technical perspective, when you think about what race cars were like, and I started paying attention to them, say in the early 80s, compared to where we're at now, it's just fascinating, the stuff that they're doing. And you can use that information to connect with people on all kinds of levels, you know, in the modern car, the modern race car, how much technology it has, how you can take a computer programmer and you talk to them about Formula One and the fact that they're downloading 18,000 data points every 10th of a second. You know, and it's amazing. So that's a cool part of this too, and I think that's something that we're all looking for in our lives, is family and work and those kinds of things are important. If you get really good at it, that's it. And I don't know, there was one of our guys on the crew, one of the tech guys, is a really good musician, piano player, you know, and just was sitting here watching him the other night, and it's fascinating to me to watch somebody, you know, who has mastery of that instrument like that and knows all kinds of different songs and all kinds of different ways to play them. And, you know, to your point, Neil, I think that's probably, although we don't realize it, some kind of what we can do in the realm of instructing with some of these guys. It's obvious that know what we're doing. So, yeah.
Well, and you're right. I mean, and that's we get that sometimes with, you know, with our day jobs, so to speak, when we're teaching, you know, with students in an academy. It's like, you know, when we get to drive them and they actually get to see beyond what we give them, and they see how we are. It's like you said, Nipper, you know, watching somebody else have such complete mastery and command of another instrument, and they see that in us, and they go, oh my God, now.
You guys see it when you give your hot laps. People are like, oh.
Right.
I never know. That's how
I
you
thought
go
I
to
was
breaks.
getting it done today.
Yeah.
You just made me look silly.
And it's someone just yesterday say, well, I wish you'd have done that earlier, because then I would have understood what I need to do. I go, no, because the most dangerous thing we can see is the aha moment. Oh, that's how you do it. without having the backup of all the years you put in to be able to do that. You know, they just
Exactly.
think, well, I'll just go do that. And no, it's not going to
But
happen.
it's hard to put a value on the cool stuff that you do get
Right.
to do. I mean, obviously, right here, we're driving some of the coolest cars on the planet. We have the new E63, which is off the chart. We got the new GTRs. I mean,
That's
we're here
super
laughing
cool.
at
Yeah.
Lime Rock Park. I mean,
That's sweet.
incredible cars. So.
Right, and I mean, you raised a really good point, Neil, that, all the years that we've spent, late nights with, takeout pizza in our garage, loading the trailer, getting the car ready, and all that stuff. I mean, all that time and effort has really made us, given us that specialty that can't be taken away. We've honed that talent and earned that talent, like the doctor that spends all the years in residency, or these guys spending years building their business. And to your other point with that is that stuff that can't be taken from us. It's not like you can lose your house, you can lose your business, whatever, but you can't take talent away from you. And one of the other things that makes me think of as well is that, and I'm sure it was probably this way for you guys, is you're early on in your careers in particular, you probably had to work a couple of different jobs to make it all work, right?
Oh,
But,
yeah.
What I've found is that over the years, it's like sometimes, you do a job that you like, but you're not particularly good at, and other times you have a job that you're really good at, but you don't particularly like. And, we're in the unique position to have jobs that we like and we're good at, which makes it kind of that much sweeter, in my opinion.
To be successful, I think it's necessary. I think you need to.
The only thing that most of them don't realize is actually how hard we all work.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know,
no,
it's so
true.
cool. You guys are here doing this, but they don't see the hot behind the scenes. We get there before they get there.
Yeah, we get to the
stay
crack of dawn,
afterwards.
stay late.
We polish the program and stuff.
It's kind of like the casual race fan that watches an oval race and goes, what's the interest here? It's so easy, it's so
Yeah.
simple.
Just turning left.
There's a heck of a lot more to it than that, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, traveling through the airports, you get there, your flight's delayed, and you're just like, oh,
Well,
all
the
that stuff.
12-hour days and, the hot days or the days when you're out there in the rain or you're testing in the rain and it sucks or it's cold or, missed flights or, goofed up hotel reservations or, whatever
Our
it happens to
reservation's
be.
not being there.
Right. All those kinds of things, I mean, and certainly every job has its pros and cons, but, we're pretty fortunate to be in this position.
Find what you're good at, what you have aptitude for, and something that you love. You combine those two, and you're likely to have a significant degree of success.
Yeah. A long career, I'd say.
And even like from an instructing standpoint, we do get to meet a lot of high net worth value people. They're successful in their life because just like Don said, and they don't see it because they look at us as like, oh, you guys have the dream jobs, and we do. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't give this up in the world. I would also say if this went away tomorrow, I can pat myself on the back, walk away with a big smile, and say, I did it. But but back to like Don was saying, there those key elements in anything in life. I think you become successful at it. And I don't care if you're selling, water bottles to the XYZ company or making iPhones. So Steve Jobs, he was a perfectionist at Apple. You look at anybody who's successful in any type of business, from motorsport racing. He had Earnhardt Sr. He loved it. He did it because he wanted to do it. Ayrton Senna, did it because he wanted to do it. Even currently, Sebastian Vettel, he's and Lewis Hamilton, all those guys, they do it because they enjoy it. In everyday life, you've got Steve Jobs, the late Steve Jobs, who was very successful. He was just passionate. He believed in himself so much and what he wanted to do.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, so fellas, now that we've all got the benefit of age and perspective, looking back on it, if you would do anything different, what would you do different?
Wow.
See, I told you, 7th Gear, we were getting deep tonight.
All these hard questions.
As you know, I'm really a left brain, a right brain kind of guy. Because
Who knew?
Who knew? Yeah. They sometimes talk to each other and sometimes go off their own. But because I was in motorsports and then I discovered dance, and I was a dancer and a professor of dance as well. I left motorsports for a while, but I came back in the mid-'80s. And so, you know, my dancer friends say, you put yourself in that metal monster and go how fast and why? And, you know, but I said, look, guys, again, it's that same drive to control high performance motion. It's about balance. We know what it means to balance a car. That's all what it's all about. You're keeping the car balanced, and it's that focus on high performance motion. It's processing information very quickly. I think that's one of the characteristics of all the guys sitting here, that you have the ability to process information quickly, and that's one of the things I love. It's the demand of that, the utter focus on the task at hand. Doing something differently, I've been very damn lucky, you know, to be able to choose two passions. Yeah, of course, I may have had a couple crashes that I had. You know,
Sure.
We all
you know, that it may have chosen something different. You know, at the uphill at Lime Rock, I had the revelation that you could probably take the uphill flat in a Formula Ford. I got to the brakes just about 0.3 of a second too late when I discovered it wasn't going to happen. And the wall used to be much closer in the uphill, if you remember. Yeah. Anyway,
It's right there.
but like you say, you process information. What did you learn?
I got to the brakes early and
Actually,
not
I
hit too
totally
hard.
forgot that they pushed it back.
Yeah, they pushed it
I-
way back.
I totally forget about that.
Yeah.
It
And
was right there.
yeah, and I mean, I only knocked the left corner off, so it wasn't a huge deal.
It wasn't much off the white line.
No, man, it was
exactly.
there.
It was right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right there.
It was right there in your
Yeah.
face.
Yeah.
Derek
If you-
Bell visited with that Audi in like 2001.
Well, you know where the corner worker station is,
Slam
where the
it.
guardrail is right there? Draw a straight line down the hill, and that's where the guardrail was all the way down to the bottom. Oh, now we're talking about this.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to actually get into that here more in just a minute. But so okay, so we got Don's take. What about the rest of you guys here on what you might do differently, if anything?
You can't look back at regrets. You know, it's an opportunity. I think sometimes, for me, the only regret I would look, I don't even want to call it a regret. The only time I would probably look at it as change, or try to see bigger pictures sometimes. Sometimes you get so focused at the end prize to get there, you get that tunnel vision. You don't, even though you have an opportunity, you're missing another opportunity that could be potentially better. That's something I would do, probably believing in something for too long, or trying to believe on something too long, and like, it's going to come through, I had an
You
opportunity.
mean like race sponsorship?
Yeah, very
too.
much like that, yeah.
No, we're not really all racing anymore. Yeah, I mean, for me, it was funny because this had to be like 98, 99. You know, I was actually supported by Lucas Oil financially, not just product, financially. And Lucas was a small company back then. And I was kind of changing, you know, my open wheel stuff. I had the budget to do open wheel stuff. The kart/IRL argument really hurt me, because I had the budget to do 3 Atlantic races, you know, and all that stuff, and that split. And so I was kind of, my uncle, I actually went out and won this big Formula Ford festival, this vintage Formula Ford festival in Tustin, and it was like 60 cars, and got big accolades and from Paul Fanner of Racer Magazine, and Jeremy Shaw and all that stuff, the writer, and it was a lot of fun. And you know, Forrest Lucas was there because he actually paid for paid for that weekend for me with tires and entries and all that. And Forrest and Bob Patterson, who's the president now of Lucas, walked up to me after and said, "We really like what you did, this, that, you know, come to our office on Monday. We want to talk to you." I said, "Well, okay." And I went in, and they said, "We want to offer you a job." And they spelt it out. They said, "Within 12 to 16 months, we want you to be running a motorsports division." I said, "Well, I still want to race." They said, "No problem. You know, Irwindale just opened up, and we'll put you in our super late model car." And I was just like, no, I'm going on this path. And I turned it down, you know. Ouch, yeah. I mean, when you got the you know, and this is when Lucas was really, really small. I mean, and they're, you know, and they're still good friends. I see them once in a while, but you kind of look back and go, okay, because I wanted to go a different path in my career, move into sports cars, and I had an opportunity to go with a GT3 team to do a bunch of testing and all that stuff, and they were paying me and whatnot. And I looked at the math. I want to work, you know, X amount, you know, 12 months of the year and make this amount of money. I'm going to work, you know, this amount of money, the same amount of money pretty much, testing and all that stuff. Well, do the math when you're younger. You go, okay, you know, it's an easy math equation. But you kind of look back now and you kind of go, well, you know, but I don't look back at regrets. I just kind of look back and, well, maybe I should have had more of perspective of what's going on around me.
A little bit bigger picture.
Exactly.
But at the same time, that could very well be kind of age-related. I don't know a whole lot of people that are in their early 20s or late teens or even mid-20s that necessarily
Even adults nowadays.
see the big picture at that age. You know,
Well,
it
yeah,
takes that life experience, getting kicked in the teeth and, you know, having to pick yourself back up to learn that.
Yeah, I mean, again, you know, I was winning stuff and it was easy and it was fun and, you know, it's a career choice. You know, you're going to give up pretty much chasing the dream. You know, and I remember having long discussions with my family about it. And they said, well, you got to do what's right. You know,
What's right for you?
what's right for me.
Yeah.
You know, and so you look at, you know, later down in life, you know, okay, you know, look where Lucas Oil has gone now. And I still get an invitation every spring to go to their summer bash that they have at the thing. And I'll see Bob at a race or something. They still say, how much oil do you need? Let me send you a case of oil. Or whatever, you know.
Nice.
Still nice people.
And they have a racing school now. They sponsor a racing school.
They sponsor a racing school, and they're involved
RC
in
Anderson.
a lot of big motorsports now.
Yeah.
Right. And you know, you saying that also makes me realize, or remember, I shouldn't say realize, I do realize it, but I find, especially in my, now at my age, that no matter what industry it is, I don't care if it's a bed and breakfast, a racing team, a restaurant, a multinational company, at the end of the day, it always comes down to the people and the relationships that you make. And that's something else that you can't get a degree in, or, you know,
absolutely.
those kinds of things. So racing teaches you a lot, that's for sure, about how to be a good person and you know, how to do it the right way. Because there's a lot of examples of how to not do it the right way. But you know,
Nipper mentioned relationships, you know, that he's loved, and that's what's one of the things so important to him. And in the end, you know, almost all business relationships are people relationships. You know, it's all
absolutely.
It's not widgets. It's not widgets.
It always comes down to the people. 100%. All right, boys,
You're up.
you're up. If you had to change anything, looking back on it now,
There's
if
quite
anything, what?
there's quite a few of them, but I was heavily involved in World Challenge, and it was a big front-wheel drive. Did all front-wheel drive in most of my life, and then when I entered into World Challenge in 2000, I switched to a BMW on purpose to go to the rear-wheel drive, and did that for 2 years and had pretty good success. Won 5 World Challenge races in those 2 years. Mazda was kind of getting involved with it, and they approached me about maybe driving with them the next year and said, hey, we have our cars, would you be interested in doing it? If you could bring a little bit of funds, we'll supplement the rest. I'm kind of like, but at the time, the cars were fast, but they break transmissions. And Don
Well, the
probably
tripod,
remembers.
Yeah.
Crazy. I mean,
Tripod,
they would
yeah.
go maybe, couldn't even barely make a session without you. You see them on their jack stands getting transmissions. I'm like, really, do I really want to deal with that? So I turned it down, and very next, so they suffered for a little bit longer, but then after that, Mazda decided to get really serious about it, made it a pro team, started paying the drivers, got SCCA to give them a sequential gearbox, and it ended all the issues there. So that was probably the biggest one, because then they went on to win a lot of races and had pretty stout cars.
That was Tri-Point Engineering, right?
Yeah, Tri-Point. So that was probably one of my bigger bobbles that I turned down and stayed in the BMW instead. But should have went with Mazda. But who knew? It's like a crystal ball. You didn't know. I mean,
don't know.
I didn't know they were going to give him all these things, and that was a lot. Especially then, you just had no idea. You know, wow, they gave him sequential gearboxes. You know, well, these are supposed to be pretty much production cars. So,
Well, the politics in racing.
and there's politics.
You know,
of
you know,
course, so.
you're so young sometimes. For me, also, just you're focused, this and that. You're a racer. I want to race, but reality, professional racing is a business, and I think that's what. It's sometimes you forget that, or you don't. If you're young, you just don't realize. All you want to do is stand on the.
You don't know.
go-kart.
That's why a lot of these young kids have managers, whether it's their fathers or parents, or they hire them a manager from
That's
the
true.
time they're in
Probably the other
go-karts.
thing I would change is a lot of you guys. I chased it on my own. I wanted to be a race car driver. You know, if you all know, most of our friends that are currently racing now are doing it in an endurance series where they're attached with another. You know, they're coaching somebody. Somebody pretty much paying that bill. So.
Yep.
I would have probably converted years before and probably given up on World Challenge and switched over to like Grand Am and stuff and went for the endurance. That would have been another thing I would have changed.
That's right. You drove for Saline the year before me or something like that. What year didn't you drive for?
It was Nonamaker.
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 Yeah, the Saline too.
You drove for Donamaker?
Once.
Okay.
Yeah. I did 1 or 2 races. I can't remember Daytona and all.
Did Daytona with them.
Yeah.
That was they're gone. It's kind of I don't know what they do.
They're doing chump car racing now.
Yeah,
Oh, is that what they
I
do?
think so, yeah.
No.
Yeah, I drove against them a lot.
Wow.
All right, so what about you, Nib? If you had to change anything looking back on it, what'd you change?
Oh, I could go on, for a long time about specifics and this time and that time. And
So you telling me that you and I are going to have our
boo-hoo,
own
you know.
separate show here?
Oh,
We're
we
going to
could
get into the
we
history?
we could go,
There's a lot. Of course, there's a lot.
Part of the problem with me is I grew up around racers from the 70s and 80s, and a lot of it changed into the early 90s and mid 90s as I was coming of age. It became much more corporate, much bigger business, and I was naive to that. I was very engaged in my own equipment, so didn't spend enough time on the funding side, was slightly rough around the edges, could have polished that up. But anyway, blah, blah about that. Probably, my stock answer for this is I didn't enjoy the successes enough in the moment, and I was too focused on the next step, and I wanted to be, a high level. I went NASCAR racing, so I wanted to be a top level Winston Cup racer. And so if I won a late model race and did a good job driving, and now I can look back and have a little perspective and see some of the local guys that were Jerry Marquis, who was Winston national champion, and raced against him every week, and that was a big deal if you beat that guy. But of course, I was always looking on to the next thing. So that would probably be, if I had to do it over again, would have, just at least personally savored some of those successes, a little bit more, and not be so focused on,
when the next one's going to come.
That's right.
I gotcha.
That's true.
That's right, yeah.
Right. And I'd say probably for myself, just looking back on it, like I said earlier, for a while there I was juggling full-time job, trying to go to school, running the race program. I probably would have not been juggling so many things at once.
Yeah.
And just focused on one, maybe two of the things, so I could have gotten through them faster and then moved on to that next step sooner, instead of spreading myself out as much as I did, thinking that I was getting them all done as fast as I could get them done, but in reality it took longer to get them done than I had expected to. So that's probably one thing that I would change looking back on it. So
Yeah, I mean, for me, I realized I wasn't smart enough on that, and I was smart enough. I realized I was smart enough not to be smart enough, and I was actually working with a business manager, and the late Charlie Litsky, and he came from a cycling management stuff. His first client was Lance Armstrong when he was doing triathlons. I mean, that's how long ago. When he was his dad was, I forgot his dad's name. Litsky was a New York Times sports
Litsky
column.
Senior?
Yeah, Litsky Senior, if you want to say it. But I was smart enough to realize I wasn't smart enough. And he passed, and because of his passing, I didn't know about it. He's the one that arranged my first Atlantic test. So he passed, and about a month later, the team calls and goes, "Okay, we're ready to go. The funds came through." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Well, Charlie made sure, even though he's passed, the funds were there. We want to let everything go and let you kind of, but he paid for your first Atlantic test with some funding of his own money, and he believed in you." And it was just, I was like, "Oh, okay." That was, and that was, I realized I needed a manager, and I've always missed that aspect of it.
Gotcha. Well, this has all been fantastic discussion, guys, and thank you all for your input. But before we wrap up the 7th Gear Show, I think it's only appropriate, since we are within shouting distance of Lime Rock Park, that I know, Nipper, this is a new track for you, but I know Neil's been here many times, as has Don. Ernie's been here, I've been here. I think it would be appropriate, since we also kind of have a historical perspective on the show. Anybody got any favorite Lime Rock stories they want to share with 7th Gear audience here tonight? And I know Don's got a million of them, and I'm sure Neil does too. I have one that's not such a Great ending, but it's a good story
Oh,
nonetheless.
we know what it's about.
Right. So I think Don's I know scanning through the Rolodex of his mind going back to the 1800s here.
Right.
When the wheels were wood.
We didn't need air in the tires.
Right. When you raced against Ben-Hur, I know.
That's it. That's it. Wow. There are just I'm trying to think.
You can hear the
I'm trying to think those
cards flipping in his
the
head
ones that I
right
can actually tell.
Right, the clean ones.
The clean ones, exactly.
It's a family show.
Well, I'm thinking. Jeez. Well, okay. Just Formula Fords. Starting however many Formula Fords we had at that point, probably 20 some at that point were running. And
this was in your Skip Barber days.
Yeah, Skip Barber days. Right. Skip Barber days. And some of the dices we had in classic Lime Rock. The only crashes I've had here have been on my own, and not in the races, which is kind of interesting.
We have something in common.
Yeah. So when the draft, because of the speeds here, is pretty significant in a Formula Ford, and you find yourself in a line and you pop out, and all of a sudden turn one comes along, and you realize that you're going at a pretty good rate of speed. This is fairly revealing, that there was a breaking point back there.
Oh yeah, that one.
That one, and when you jump the curb in turn one, trying to not hit the guys who are next to you and land in between them through no particular skill of one's own, and thinking.
Serendipity.
I got this. But also then because I also lost a little bit of grip because the car doesn't slow down quite as well when the tires are in the air. And so then you start to skate out towards, and all of those folks that I had just passed with this heroic move, go on by, along with a couple others, go on by between 1 and 2. So yeah, that was one of those heroic moments when the hero to zero happened in.
Yes.
Yeah. That's just one. That's just. But yeah. I've never even been upside down in a Formula Ford, which is I probably won't get in a Formula Ford again just because now that I said that.
I was going to say,
right.
Now you've set the cosmos in motion there, Don.
You were upside down last night.
No, that's a different deal.
Yeah, that's a different story.
That's a different story. No,
it's a different show.
Yeah.
Shaking, not
Bruce
stirred.
McGinnis landing his airplane on the front straight.
Very cool.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Didn't hear about that.
Yeah, I
landing
remember
landing his airplane on the front straight was an entertaining story here as well. Oh, there. Someone else. I'll blather on.
All right, Neil. How about you? You've raced here a number of times.
Yeah, I'm pretty
You've won
lucky.
here too, haven't you?
I have. I was it's kind of a home track. I grew up here in the Northeast, so raced Lime Rock many times. From the mid '90s, actually. Anything from showroom stock to World Challenge. A couple of class wins. The World Challenge was pretty cool. It was the first one I did was with T.C. Klein here. He had the new E46s, so here I'm in a rear-wheel drive car, and actually that particular weekend, I think like 65 cars showed up. They actually had to have a qualifying race. There's not enough room to send 20 people home, which was insane. Wow. So there's 45 people qualifying for this race, and we get out there and I'm qualifying, and you have to lift at the top of the hill so you don't spin the tires. So I lift, go back to throttle, snaps the throttle cable. Luckily, as you guys know, you're able to just coast into the pit lane. I'm like, guys, something's wrong. They're like, shut it off. They're like, man, you're done. I'm like, no, come on, you got to fix it. And they're like, you're sick. I think I was 5th. Yeah. Out of 45. I'm like, you're 5th on the grid. You're good. I'm like, no, there's more in this car. Please fix the car. So I'd taken my helmet off, my radio off, started fiddling with it. Finally, he's like, try it. I'm like, it starts. I'm like, put my helmet on, no radio, blow out of the pits. And it's even lucky to get a clean lap. I mean, the cloud spread. I got one lap, no traffic.
Wow.
So that was a cool moment. Put it on the pole. Broke first car to break the 1 minute barrier in World Challenge. So that was
yeah.
a great day.
That's big.
But I didn't know it.
Nice.
The thing snapped again coming down the front straightaway.
Whoops.
And I got stranded around 2 and 3. And they finally towed me in, and the crew comes running over to grab the car, like, you got to go to the media. You're on the pole. I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah.
I'm mad. I had no idea where I'm at. I had no radio. Like, dude, seriously, you're on the pole with a track record. I'm like, seriously? Seriously.
Yeah.
So it was an awesome day.
Yeah, yeah.
It was probably obviously my biggest highlight. of the
That's
year,
very
so
cool.
It was
That's
cool.
very
It was a
cool.
weekend.
Yeah.
So ended up didn't win the race. Started from the pole, finished second. Ran the rear tires off the car. I was a front wheel drive guy, so I had it set up perfectly for qualifying, but they burned off. So I learned from that weekend that start that little guy with a little bit of a push and let it kind of come to you. And it was a learning experience and a lot of fun.
Right on.
Cool.
All right, so Nipper, I know this is a little bit of an unfair question since this is a new track for you, but tell us what you like about it, or you feel
I
like
have
it.
good memories. I came here with Dad quite a few times. So
Okay, well then it's not an unfair
so-
question.
Right.
Well, you race
What are you holding back
NASCARs
for?
and they race NASCARs.
I didn't
around
race the
here.
Busch
I know you
North.
didn't,
I
but
didn't.
that's crazy
Yeah, but
that
it's
they
cool
race
that
them here.
yeah. And,
How can you race that big car around here?
must have been. I mean, they'd have big fields too back in
Yeah,
those
they
days
did.
when they ran them here. So I know I came here a lot of times. I came once when
Wow.
my dad was driving a 2-liter Can-Am car, kind of at the end of the
were you?
Can-Am stuff. It would have been about 10, 12,
Wow, that's
12 then. And then a GTP race around that time too, a big IMSA race. So it would have been like 85, 6, something like that. When
Camel Lights?
my dad was driving a Camel Light car, was driving a Buick with Charles Morgan, but they had all kinds of cool cars there. Of course, the 962s and Holbert was really good, but the Jaguars with the V12 engines and
Davy
Mazdas
Jones.
with the rotary, and
Bryce
yeah,
Bob.
it was a cool era. So I remember distinctly kind of watching cars through the left-hander and right-hander there as a kid. Was here one time with the Can-Am and Bertil Roos, who had a driving school right around the Pocono area. His 2-liter Can-Am car, he got about just past the start-finish line, and the whole rear cowling of the thing blew off. They hadn't Zeus buttoned it correctly, so he spun into turn one, and animated guy anyway, so he cursed at
Bird
everybody.
is so
when he-
quick. He's so quick.
Yes. So I guess those are my Lime Rock stories. I got to see some good stuff. Anyway.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. How about for you, Ernie?
Oh, I mean, for me, growing up on the West Coast, my first driving school was at Riverside and Laguna and Sears and all that. But always seeing Lime Rock on TV. I remember the first time I had to come out here for a Grand Am race, and I remember it kind of started that weekend when I actually ran into Phil Hill and his, right before he passed, and it's just kind of ran into him at Charlotte, the connector flight, and he actually stood up and he hadn't got out of his wheelchair in years. And, I shook Phil's hand. And that was the last time I saw Phil. So it kind of started with that moment because I'm going to Lime Rock, then going to Lime Rock and going through the gates and going, I'm here. You know what I mean? You see it on TV, and when you're coming
Such
from
a
the
pretty track.
exactly. I mean,
Pretty setting.
from the West Coast, besides even MRLS, Monster Race with Laguna Seca, it's unless it's wintertime, it's all dry and brown. You come here, it's the foliage, it's you see it on TV and you're actually there. And I remember going down pit lane and I was so enamored, going out to practice, I forgot which button to hit for the pit lane speed limit. And then you get the thing, you got to come in, Ralph wants to talk to you, you're a little bit high on this pit lane. You're like, oh, okay. Just stuff like that. Just absorbing the track the first time, you're like, I'm here.
Yeah.
It's just, but then from a downside is also that weekend too, someone got a hold of my credit card and booked and happened to book 2 round trip tickets to like Paraguay in first class on my card too, and I didn't know about it. So that came out of the rental car place.
nice
too.
guy.
Right.
But just stuff like that. I mean, just the memories of just coming from the West Coast, coming here, and start, like I said, from Charlotte and coming to the track. It's green and going through the gates, and you go, okay, this is cool.
Yeah, we get rain here.
Yeah, you get
Right.
it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I remember, just like in the late 80s, early 90s, like you were saying, Nipper, watching the heyday of the GTP cars with Holbert and the 962 Lowenbrau Porsche and,
Well,
the...
Kendall
How
and
about
the
John
Trippin.
Morton?
Well, that's what I was just going to say. And Morton.
Well, Morton's an El Segundo boy too.
And Tommy Kendall running the Intrepid and watching the TV coverage and even the Trans Am stuff. You know, like when Pruitt was running the Mercurs for Roush and Dallenbach and those guys, and watching Kendall come flying up, you know, under the bridge to go through the downhill in the Intrepid, and knowing that these guys are turning laps in like 35 seconds or whatever it was, and trying to wrap your head around that is just, you know, like craziness. But oh well.
Yeah, the picture of John Morton going over up the uphill and launched, and never came down except he hit on the lid.
Right.
Kept going over.
Right.
Really?
Yeah. That's when they put the first old chicane in at the top of the hill, the one that goes to the right, that not the one that's there currently, the one that goes up to the right, to slow the P cars down, the fast cars down, because you had to come in, you had to slow it down, brake, and then you entered in past the uphill.
I've never driven this new configuration, but it looks pretty miserable watching it on TV.
I'm not fond of it.
Yeah, it's well, you know,
the curves are kind of ground
this
down.
is a topic for a whole nother show. But we could
We
talk
can
about
always
how,
start
you know,
off.
some of the classic racetracks, not just here in North America, but all over the world, have been kind of
Watkins Glen.
neutered and dumbed down.
Chicanes we hate.
Chicanes we hate.
Hey, if you come over there too fast, you're going to launch. So
Right.
you get better
So,
lift.
Right.
I don't know, leave it the same.
Three pedals in those cars.
Right.
There are three pedals.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, Watkins Glen turn 5 wasn't that such a great corner? I mean, you know, the old original turn 5 comes flying into there at huge speed.
Right.
Did you do? Oh, I never did it.
Yeah.
I never
Oh
did
yeah,
it.
oh yeah.
I never did the new one.
Absolutely.
Wow.
But
I
you
remember
know,
watching it. I
but
never
when
did it.
when McDuffie and then Kendall, you know, after
Right.
that they had to do something.
Well, I think we've actually just stumbled
Sorry.
onto a topic for another show. But guys, we've actually gone an hour already talking about this whole thing. So, I mean, Seventh Gear viewers, there you have it. This is the answer to the question and then some. See, we under-promise and over-deliver right
Jump in
here.
the car and come on down the line.
So, yeah, obviously, like I said, we're here at Lime Rock. It's great to hear some of these stories and some of these memories. But as we wrap up tonight, I want to say special guests, thank you to our special guests, Mr. Don Kutchell, Ernie Becker, Neil Sapp, and my good friend Nipper Alsip, for joining me tonight and giving all of you, as well as me, their unique perspective on why we do what we do. So, again, thanks very much for tuning in. Stay tuned for the next show 2 weeks after this Thursday, and I'll have another special guest here ready for you. But in the meantime, make sure you check out BeNonHuman.com for all your lifestyle and apparel needs, as well as the infamous Kraus collection. You'll be able to buy your own Kraus apparel on the Be Non-Human website. And until the next 2 weeks, be greater. See ya.